There's a lot of ways to skin a cat. There's also a lot of ways to sand a 3D print, so let's talk about them all. And by all of them, I mean all of them that I can think of in this moment, so leave me comments on more. So the first and probably most obvious is literally just sandpaper. Now, I like to get these little pre-cut sheets. They come inside of this nice little box. I think there's maybe like 200 pieces of sandpaper in varying type of grits that comes in this box for like $8. And typically you'll want to work with something that's much coarser or a lower grit sandpaper, and then eventually work your way up to something that is finer or a higher grit sandpaper. You can also get power sanders. I find these to be really helpful for bigger things like my Mandalorian helmet. On the other side, if you have really tiny things that you need to sand or just like little tiny crevices, these little sanding swords, knives, whatever they're called, can be really helpful too. These are pretty cheap, but if you don't want to buy them, you can actually just take a normal piece of sandpaper and wrap it around like a popsicle stick or something like that, and boom, you got your own homemade little, I still don't know what these things are called. I also got this little doohickey, which is technically like you can wrap your sandpaper around it and then it turns it into a handle to make it easier to sand stuff. Once you get all the big chunks off, using something like a filler primer can really help smooth out, and then you can go in and sand this again once it's fully dried. I really recommend wet sanding with this. I find it comes out with really great results. But also if you're in a pinch and you kind of just want to spray on some filler to fill in those layer lines, I've also found clear coat can work pretty well. I don't find that it sands great, but it is an option, again, if you don't have any actual filler primer around. From there, getting into some more dedicated fillers. So I feel like Bondo or any type of like generic glazing putty is something that a lot of people really recommend using. It's a pretty thick paste that you can apply directly, or you can also add acetone to this and it like liquefies it a little more, and then you can just brush it out with a paintbrush and again sand it down from there. My main gripe with Bondo or products like it is that you definitely need to use like a lot of PPE, so respirator gloves, stuff like that, because it can be toxic. So I don't love that. My recent favorites has been Liquitex in its place, which you don't really need PPE for, which is fantastic in my opinion. However, it is pretty expensive, so what I like to use in its place, and I don't have any on hand unfortunately right now, but Spackle. Spackle is amazing, it's so cheap, and it really gets the job done, in my opinion, almost just as well as this. Finally, if maybe you cracked off a piece of your model or you have a big gaping hole in the middle of it that you need to fill in, something like this Epoxy Sculpt, which is a two-part AB substance that you mix together, can actually be really fantastic. It gets super hard when it finally like mixes all together and freezes into place. I wouldn't recommend this for filling in general layer lines because it is so thick and it does set to be so hard that it makes it pretty difficult to sand down, but in the right purposes, it can be great. I haven't used this option, but I do hear a lot of people talking about it, particularly people who more so are on the resin printing side, which is actually using some type of resin and brushing it on to remove the layer lines. I have been meaning to try this for the longest time. I just haven't yet. I imagine you could use any type of either UV resin or a standard like AB part resin, but maybe there's somebody in the comments who knows more about this. A little less traditional, but I just made this base and I covered it in hot glue to get this drippy effect, and you can't see any of the layer lines, although some of you did say that it looks like somebody blew a load on it. So yeah, there's that. And then finally, you have filaments that are things like Polysmooth or ABS or ASA that can actually be vapor smooth. Particularly, I like Polysmooth because unlike ASA or ABS, it's a material that you don't need an enclosure on your 3D printer for. So this one just works best for me. That's everything I can think of now, and pretty much everything should be linked in my bio under post-processing supplies. But if you have any questions or other ideas on how to smooth out layer lines, let us know.